What's going on, Bears fans? And welcome to another episode of the Nick and Herb Show. I'm your host, Nicholas Moreano, and alongside me, my good friend Herb Howard. Herb, it's been a minute. How have you been?
I'm good, man. I'm good, man. Didn't get a chance to hop on here last week. I've been dealing with um, life stuff, I suppose.
Mhm.
So missed last week, but definitely missed talking ball with you. Missed talking ball with all the Bears fans out there. Glad we back this week. Did have some Bears news this week, so we got some things to catch up on.
Absolutely. And, obviously now it's March Madness too. I feel like I'm like the worst, I don't know, sports fan sometimes. I have consumed maybe 15 minutes, 15 total minutes of college basketball. I don't know why. I love this time of the year. I submitted a bracket maybe at the last minute,
Yeah,
but I just haven't been as plugged in at this round, this stage yet. But I saw you were watching some college basketball yesterday.
I definitely checked out some college basketball. Went over to Diversity House here in Chicago. Shout out to Diversity House. Um, and they had a great setup, bunch of TVs and all that. So I sat there, watched a couple of games, man. I watched McNeese State. They was
Mm.
whooping Clemson. I was actually kind of surprised that they only won by 2 because they was whooping them all game. Clemson had like 13 points at halftime. But March Madness is fun, man. I haven't watched much, if of any, uh, college basketball throughout the
Mhm.
season. I just haven't really. I've been more interested in the women's game than the men's game for the past year or two. But March Madness just brings along that certain energy, man. That's just like, all right, let's just tune in and check it out, man. It's always interesting. It's always fun, and so March Madness is here, and I'm excited to see who can go on a little bit of a run, man. I got to shout out my homegirl though. Aaron coaches the women's team at William and Mary.
Okay.
Erin Dickerson Davis, she's the head coach at William and Mary. They went on a great run through their tournament to earn a spot in the NCAA tournament, and then they played in their first 4 game and knocked off a team that they weren't supposed to. And so now, they get to punch their tickets. The first time ever in school history that William and Mary has gone to the tournament, and obviously the first time that they won a game in the tournament. So huge shout out to my homegirl, Erin Dickerson Davis, fellow Whitney Young Dolphin from back in the high school days. Super, super proud of her. Continue to write that story, girl.
That's awesome, man. I mean, that's
Yeah,
that's that's what makes this time of the year so I think just you just want to stay tuned in and watch some of these teams that, like you said, had no business but still are look where they're at now. Like that's what makes it
yeah.
so intriguing and so much fun to watch. But to kind of transition here, Herb, there has been some news, and I think we'll kind of start off with that before we get into our main topic for this show. But the Bears did end up earlier in the week officially signing Olamide Zaccheaus,
Yep.
who was with most recently with the Washington Commanders last year. He spoke to the media on Monday. Going to play that slot role, but also does have some versatility as a return man. But most recently, the Bears just also signed Devin Duvernay, who is definitely known for his return ability. A two-time Pro Bowler, first
Yep.
team All Pro back in 2021. What do you think of the moves and just what it kind of does for this Bears team overall?
Well, I'll start with Devin Duvernay because it gives the Bears a real guy, a real proven returner. To back their returning kicks. They've been trying some things out the past couple of years. Obviously, had high hopes for Bayless that did not work out. They put a few different guys back there. Obviously, they were able to get the big return with Josh Blackwell and the trick play up in Green
Mhm.
Bay last game of the season. But now to have a solid, proven guy, this is what he has done since he's been in the league. He's been a good kick returner, like you said, 2-time Pro Bowler. So you got to feel confident that now that you got a real guy back there. So shout out to Coach Hightower. They finally got him a guy that he can, depend on back there that can have some consistency. And I think they also did a pretty good job of adding to the competition in their wide receiver room. And when they signed, Olamide Zaccheaus, a lot of people were hitting me up like, well, why won't they give Tyler Scott a chance? It's like, I don't think they're not giving him a chance, but they couldn't afford to go into the season and say this slot job is yours 100%. You bring in competition, and if Tyler Scott is the player that I know he thinks he is and thinks he can be, he can go out there and he can compete and find him some reps. Last year there weren't any for him. Obviously, they brought in Keenan Allen and drafted Rome, and so last year there weren't any reps. You just told me he caught one ball for 5 yards last year. So hopefully he'll get more opportunities, but he's going to have to earn them, and it shouldn't be without competition. And so if they didn't sign veterans, they were probably going to draft some anyway. They still may draft one, but now you got some competition in that room that you can feel pretty good about. I think Olamide Zaccheaus is a pretty good addition to that room, and I look forward to seeing how Ben Johnson chooses to kind of deploy him out of the slot and motion. And, you know, he likes to do a lot of pre-snap activity. And so, you know, those guys will be on the move. And I'm interested to see what it all means for DJ Moore and Rome Odunze, too, in terms of where they'll most consistently line up.
Yeah, no, I like your point about bringing in guys. Like, you couldn't just go ahead and just label Tyler Scott as that third, fourth kind of guy, because I think bringing in competition is going to bring out the best in all those players there. And for Tyler, it's you know, he hasn't really gotten the opportunity, Herb, I would say, to show that maybe he's improved from 2023, to show like he can track the ball, which was kind of the issue during that 2023 season. But also now, like Ben Johnson, Ryan Poles, they can't wait for that just to happen. You got to see it all like play out when there is more competition in the room. So that's why bringing in the guys that they did, I think overall it makes for obviously better competition, but it's going to honestly put the best wide receivers out there when they need to go that 3 set, maybe 4 wide receivers whenever they have to do that. But I just think that it is a smart move to have more rather than less, because you're not just forced to play the guys that you have. Now you have a little bit of variety, a little bit of options. All 3 of those guys, the common denominator is speed. So I think when you're looking at these additions, like Ben Johnson wanted to add that. I did a show earlier today, and someone made a good point where they were saying essentially, there isn't a lot of size at the wide receiver position from the Bears. Like Rome would be your biggest kind of dude at this point, which isn't an issue. And I see where like some people can be looking at this wide receiver room, maybe thinking that could be a different type of addition if you add that. But still, with the guys that they have, I'm curious to see how Ben Johnson will utilize them. And like you said, the motion is going to be a big part of it. You saw St. Brown going in motion a bunch, even Jameson Williams at times. So it's now that Ben Johnson has some more pieces to play with in this game that, he's going to construct for his offensive identity. Like, it just makes it, I think, more, I don't know, like another thing that defenses have to game plan for, because when there's certain types of speed on the field, that does change how you can maybe dictate coverage or who you're going to have to, allocate some resources to. So I do like that they did bring in competition. And like you said, you do have a proven guy at the kick/punt returner spot. DeAndre Carter kind of filled that role last year, but I think Devin Duvernay, given his track record, he's going to be a nice addition. And Coach Hightower, I'm sure he's going to find some good and creative ways to utilize a guy like that.
Yeah, I mean, the DeAndre Carter season, his season was just interesting to me because I like his skill set, but some of the decision making in terms of when he wanted to go up and field the ball, when he didn't, when he wanted to let it hit the ground, when he wanted to bring it out, when he didn't, was kind of a little sketchy, considering it's a veteran guy who plays with a lot of confidence. It was just a little interesting at sometimes of the decisions that he would or wouldn't make. But I'm excited that they got Devin Duvernay back there. But I want to go back to Tyler Scott for just a second, because I think he does have a pretty good skill set. Like, you talk about his speed, his ability to stretch the field. He's kind of that long, smooth strider. Like, it doesn't necessarily look like he's flying, but he's moving really, really fast. And I think, you can find a way to use that. But again, you talk about, I want to say Zaccheaus had around 500 yards last year, something like that. That's what you want from your third receiver, right? So if you can get Rome and DJ, they're up around 1,000 or whatever. If they can get to 2,000 between the two of them, then you get another guy in there that's around 500. That's what you kind of want from that third receiver. And if Tyler Scott is capable of doing that, and I know he's the guy that's not afraid to compete, then you got to go out there and compete. And you got to bring in other guys that are also capable of doing that and let the cream rise to the top and see who's going to be out there the most on Sundays. And if that's Tyler, cool. If it's not, then obviously they made a good decision in bringing in Olamide. So, it'll just be interesting, like you said, to see how they go about using them. And then we'll get plenty of opportunity through the spring and summer to see how that thing is coming along, right? And so it's very rare that you go through the whole spring and summer and the guy does nothing, and then he's like, oh, boom, in the season. You usually start to see that kind of build up throughout spring, throughout training camp, and you're like, no, I think they got a player coming here. And so We'll see how it goes, man. But it'll be a good competition. I'm sure Tyler Scott won't shy away from it. He'll have to earn his opportunities, and when he gets them, he just needs to take advantage of them.
Absolutely. And, the other thing that I like with Zacchaeus, obviously playing with a fellow rookie quarterback in that former draft class with Jaden
Yep.
Daniels and seeing how much success he had. And I think that will bode well when he's coming, obviously, in year 2 with Caleb Williams and seeing that
And
he
Antoine Randall.
Exactly. So that's all good points there with, the group that I think is in place for Caleb. It should equate to a lot more success and just, hopefully less sacks too in this upcoming year 2. But
Get
I
that
think
ball out, kid. Get that
you got
ball
it.
out,
You
kid.
have weapons, and hopefully now you have protection, so you don't have to you play maybe that hero ball or wait for things to be open when they're not going to be there, depending on coverage or whatever it may be. But yeah, that's definitely going to help Caleb Williams out in year 2. Herb, our main topic for today's show, and just kind of running it by you. I feel like more and more as we're kind of getting close to the draft. I believe it's 34 days away for night 1 from this point today. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like more people are talking about the idea of maybe the Bears not upgrading still like the trenches with that 10th overall pick if the Bears choose to stay there, but using it on what I would call still a luxury type of pick on guys like an Ashton Genty, obviously a running back, Tyler
Yep.
Warren, Penn State, another tight end. We know that Ben Johnson liked to use the tight end set, the 12 personnel in Detroit. But I guess the big question here is, are the Bears good enough in the trenches with the upgrades they've made in free agency through trades to not still look to address the trenches with that 10th overall pick if they choose to stay there?
You know what, Nick? And I've been saying this in the past couple like interviews that I've done. Is that like if you would have said this to me 2 weeks ago, I'd have been like, absolutely not. I don't want to hear about Ashton Genty or Tyler Warren. As much as I like their game and their tape and how productive they were, no, the Bears weren't in position to do that. You fast forward 2 weeks, and they've brought in a pro level center, Hall of Fame left guard, a guy who's been a Pro Bowler at right guard. You bring in proven production at the D tackle spot. You bring in an intriguing DN, and now you're starting to address some of these needs that you had coming into this kind of pre-draft process. And now I think it's more open, man. I think it's at least on the table, Nick. I don't think I would do it in terms of drafting Genty specifically. But it's on the table. I'm willing to have the conversation with people who are pro Genty at 10 than I was, a couple weeks ago. And so you got to give Ryan Poles and his staff credit for the way they've gone about kind of addressing some of their needs, and it does give them some draft flexibility that they didn't have just a couple of weeks ago. And now I'm kind of willing to have the conversation with you. I wouldn't do it because of two reasons. One, the Bears still do have other needs, but two, this is a pretty deep draft at running back. And so you can get a good running back to put in the backfield with DeAndre Swift later on in the draft process. Second round, still guys going to be there. If Caleb Johnson is there for you at 37 or 39 or 41, 37 or
39,
41,
39, 41.
39,
Yep.
then I would say go ahead and draft him. Right, he's a very, very intriguing back coming out of Iowa. You know about all the Iowa kids. I think you can get one later. Even if you go third, fourth round, there'll still be some intriguing prospects at running back. And so for that reason, I would still stay away from Ashton Genty, although he's a really good player. But I got to shout out Papa John's, my guy Adam Johns, from The Athletic and from Hogan Johns. He's kind of convincing me that maybe he flipped this thing around. Like how you said, I don't know if the Bears – what'd you say? Are they good enough to do that? Right? Are they good enough to take one of those players? And what Adam John says is they're not good enough to pass on one of those players, right? Like they're not good enough to pass on these impact, could be elite, could be perennial Pro Bowler, could be Hall of Fame players. And I think when you look at Tyler Warren and his ability at tight end, you could be looking at another elite tight end coming into this league. Stylistically, you start to try to figure out, okay, is he more Gronk or is he more
Brock Bowers or
Brock Bowers or what's from San Francisco?
Oh, George Kittle.
George Kittle, right? And George Kittle's got a little bit more wiggle and speed. So maybe he's somewhere in the middle. Maybe he's a Jeremy Shockey type or something like that. But either way, I think he's going to be a really, really good weapon. And start to say, maybe the Bears are just in the process of how many really, really good football players can we get on this roster? And we'll figure out the rest of it later, because maybe they aren't good enough to pass on one of those dudes, as opposed to looking at it the other way and saying, well, they aren't good enough to take one of those dudes.
That's a good way of framing it. Shout out to Papa John's and just the discussion. And like you, I'm willing to have a discussion. You know, Herb, I would have been willing to have any type of discussion with you when it comes to Bears football. But now with, you know, what the Bears have done in free agency, yeah, you can realistically talk yourself into Ashton Jeanty, Tyler Warren, because how I look at this, both those guys are impact players that help Caleb Williams. Like Tyler Warren out there is your dual threat kind of tight end. He will help in the run game by blocking. He's going to be a pass threat as well. And that helps obviously Caleb Williams. Obviously Ashton Jeanty, like if you're a team that wants to load up the box because now you have to go against a guy like that opens things up in the pass game for Caleb. So I completely get that. So that's why we can have this discussion. My thinking of this is that although the Bears did address both, you know, the offensive and defensive line, they did so with, I think, especially when I look at guys like Grady Jarrett and Joe Thuney. Grady Jarrett will be 32 in April. Joe Thuney's already 32. So those are definitely not your long-term answers. It's more so like, here, let's plug them in.
You're hoping for 2 or 3 years at the most, right?
Exactly. So, and what I've always, like, I've been comparing a lot of things to the Eagles, maybe because they just won a Super Bowl, but how they've been doing it on the defensive line.
That's the standard right now.
That's a standard. And, you know, maybe with baseball coming back, I'm using some analogies there, but like a farm system. Like they keep having guys that come in, even though they have proven starters. When those guys eventually get signed in free agency by other teams or an injury happens, they're still plug and play, ready to go.
They got waves,
with the Bears,
man.
They got waves. And Ryan Poles talked about wanting to have waves on the defensive line. Yeah. But for the Bears, they still technically aren't there in terms of the waves, especially, I don't know how many teams are super deep on their offensive line, to be completely honest, if a starter goes down. But let's say if a guy like Will Campbell is there at 10 and the Bears, you know, wanted to draft him, and maybe he doesn't even necessarily, obviously you would think he would start, but like that's a guy that can fill in for Braxton Jones if they feel like Braxton Jones is not giving them what they need, or like that Joe Thuney replacement if in a couple of years. So it gives them flexibility, but also a proven good player to go in there and play. And then defensive line, like Dayo Odeyingbo, yes, they signed him to a 3-year, $48 million deal. We still need to see the production. Like he's being paid like he's already proven it. And now we need to see it this season, opposite of Montez Sweat. And Montez had a down year. If he has a down year, then you're putting everything at Odeyingbo. Like I don't like those chances given what they have right now with Austin Booker, Daniel Hardy, and Dominic Robinson. So that's why I think if there is a capable defensive end that you think, like you draft him, but also like this discussion is mute. Like if Tyler Warren and Jeanty are off the table by 10, right? Then you're probably
which is possible,
which is so possible. So it's a fascinating conversation, but again, credit to this Bears front office and how aggressive they were in free agency to where they don't necessarily have to maybe take the best lineman because they do have like a starting 5. Like if Ryan Poles wants to run it back with Braxton Jones at left tackle, I'm okay with it, given all the additions they've made on this offensive line. And then defensive line, if they don't like a guy like James Pierce for whatever reason, Michael Williams, because they've addressed the defensive line, then I get it. But it's just going to be a fascinating conversation. Who's actually there at 10 and what will be the move there, given, again, how the first 9 picks go. And, I just wrote up an article where Will Campbell was there at 10, and I ended up in the scenario trading back and still getting like a guy like James Pierce at 13. Again, mock drafts mean absolutely nothing, but that's what happened there using PFF. But that's why this conversation is so intriguing. And like, we'll probably have a different version of this conversation at some point before the draft, but that's what makes it so intriguing.
So I got an eye over here in the comments. I'm liking some of the stuff I'm hearing. I'm gonna get to y'all in the comments. Shout out to all of y'all, man. Thank y'all for being here. Please hit the like button. Also, make sure you subscribe and set the alert so you know every time that we go live, and feel free to share it with another Bears fan as we continue to grow this conversation. But thank y'all most importantly for being here. I want to go back to the idea of waves, right? Having these waves. And usually when you talk about having waves, you're talking about through the course of a game. Do I have 7, 8, 9 guys that can come in and be impact players on my defensive front? What the Eagles have done and what you were alluding to is having like generational waves, right? So not just waves through this game, but waves from season to season that says, okay, we're going to lose Brandon Graham because he's going to retire. We're going to lose Sweat because we aren't paying him that. And we don't have to pay him that because we've already restocked the cupboard for the next guy to step in. And we're going to continue to do that. I guarantee you in the first couple of rounds, the Eagles are going to draft a defensive impact player probably on their front. Like they're going to do that again. They're going to continue to dip into that Georgia bag. It's like they might as well just start. Like Kirby Smart is kind of already on their coaching staff. Like just continue to have those types of guys working with them. And so I like the fact that they continue to have not only waves of players throughout the game, but waves of players from season to season. And that allows them not to have to overpay when free agency hits or a guy's number gets too high. You can kind of just move on to the next dude. And so doing that makes a ton of sense. But I'm looking at in the comments, shout out to Sam, says, Tyler Warren creates a 12 personnel nightmare for DCs. I agree with you, right? You get him on the field with Cole Kmet, and now you have a real problem on your hand because with Ben Johnson's ability to diagnose plays and scheme guys open, he's going to create mismatch nightmares all over the field. Because now if you bring those two guys onto the field, and you can line them up in a ton of ways. You can put them opposite each other in the slot. You can stack them right next to each other. You could run some type of a combo package with them, and you're going to have a real problem. And so, listen, is it a luxury pick? Maybe, right? But also, do the Bears have the luxury of not adding a guy that could be that impactful for them? Listen, if you press me on it today, I would still say their biggest need right now is an edge rusher, right? If the left tackle's there, if you want to go Will Campbell, if you want, I'm intrigued by Membo too at Missouri. Find him as an intriguing prospect as well. If you want to go there, cool. But if you want to kick that can down the road for another year and say, okay, we're going to get somebody else here because we're at 10 and we don't necessarily expect to be at 10 again. And maybe we go into next year where the only need is to address, the only major need is to address that left tackle spot, and they can do it via free agency or however they choose to go about it. But I'm getting a little excited about the prospect of Tyler Warren. Genty, love it, cool. I think you can get an impact running back later in the draft. But Tyler Warren might be just one of those difference-making tight ends. And you talk about Ben Johnson and the way he uses two tight end set. It's intriguing, man. I'm not going to lie to you, bro. But I would still say they got to go edge rusher because I'm with you. Like, just opposite Montez Sweat, you don't have anything proven. You're projecting Odangbo to take that next step. And he had a lot of pressures and hurries and hits. He's got to turn those in the sack. So you know that he can rush, but he has to be able to finish. And the idea is that playing on the same line with Montez Sweat, with Grady Jarrett, with Billings, like, he'll be better positioned to get home and finish some of those. And so maybe that's the case. Plus he has the versatility to move up and down the line. You like that about him too. But who then is going to step into that spot when he does kick in on third down? Is it going to be Austin Booker? Does he take that next step? Or do you bring in a guy like Pierce from Tennessee, who I am very, very intrigued by his just natural bend ability to get around that corner, his burst, his speed. That's how you can finish on some of those plays. And so if I had to rank their needs, I would still say it's edge rusher, then left tackle. But if they choose to skip that and go to tight end, I'm not mad. I'm not mad, bro.
I get it, Herb. I get it. And I like the thought process there. Like, we shouldn't be picking this high again too. So go back to take the best player available. If that happens to be a tight end or a running back, I get that level of thinking, because the Bears realistically should not be picking in the top 10 next season or hopefully the years after that, given the roster upgrades that they've made and the players that we project them to be and to just contribute in this next season, but the upcoming season as well. And we'll say this, why I don't think it'll be Tyler Warren, and it could be, but why, like, you are getting an impact player,
Mhm.
but how often is that impact player actually on the field? Like,
Good
is it
point.
maybe 30% of the snaps? And it's like, is that worth the top 10 pick when you're most likely going to be in those 3-by-1, 3 wide receiver sets? Like, maybe it changes when you do have a guy like that, because the Bears right now have DJ Moore and Roman Dunze, and Zacchaeus was signed, and I'm sure he'll obviously see the playing field. But if you
This
do have,
is Cole's third year in this contract.
is that right? Is it already 3 years or 2? Now I have to go look at.
I
Yeah,
think
no,
I think he's going into the third year of that. It was 4 year, $50 million, I think it was. And I think this is the third year, which probably means most of the guaranteed money will be done after this year.
Yep, we are looking this up right now.
And if that's the case, now we're back to that generational wave conversation.
There we go. Yeah.
Where maybe when Cole's ready to sit back down at the table, and I like Cole, and I think in Ben Johnson's system, Cole could end up having a 10 touchdown season. Yeah. I don't think that's shit. He had 7 2 years ago, right? In Justin's last year. So I don't think it's out of the realm where he could get up to 10 touchdowns and be that red zone threat, and Ben Johnson utilizing them. That being said, when he's ready to sit back down at the table, maybe you can say, "Hey, Cole, we appreciate you. Go get your bag, but we drafted your replacement already, bro." So maybe you can get into that generational wave conversation at multiple positions. Tight end could be one of them. So, it's just something to think about.
No, I mean, you're right there, Herb, going into year 3. And then I like this comment here from Mike. I mean, well, I don't know if I like it, but it's something to think about. Bears could pull a Lion and draft Warren and trade. I mean, they had TJ Hawkinson, right? And then they traded him to Minnesota, and now they have their guy Sam Laporta. But it's like, look,
another Iowa guy.
Another Iowa. That's what they do. That's what they do, Herb. And maybe they have a future running back the Bears might take in Caleb Johnson. But it is something to think about. And I always like preface this too. When it comes to the draft, it is great reality TV because you just don't know what the hell's going to happen. Like we have all these things like, yeah, they're going
projections and mocks.
All this. Throw that out of the table once it comes draft night, because literally anything's on the table. Who's going to make the trade? Who's going to do whatever needs to be necessary to get the player that organization wants? And that's what makes it, again, really intriguing. But
the Bears should just have their doctors just start leaking all kind of bad, false information on Abdul Carter's foot. Like, he's never going to walk again. He can't stand up. He can't get out of bed. Like, just leak all of
anything
that and let him fall to 10 and just run that card up there, man.
You're gonna have people on Twitter going out there. According to a source,
right.
Abdul Carter literally doesn't even like football or something
right.
crazy outlandish thing. And
he hates puppies and kicks babies. Like,
you can't draft a guy like that. You can't draft a guy like that, man. 1 through 9, but at 10, that's all on the table there. But no, it's God, like that would be fascinating. Where the injury says he slip out of the number. He was going to be the number 1 overall pick, and now all this conversation about like the injuries and could it just be? It's also a completely different draft for quarterbacks too. Like like they just get overinflated. They go above guys that probably shouldn't have gone above, but happens every time.
And then there's always going to be somebody that reaches. Somebody's going to reach, and somebody's going to get nervous and trade up and get somebody. And if Cam Ward goes and then Shador goes or whatever in the top 3 or 4, Dart. who's getting Dart, right? And does anybody get antsy? And it's like, I don't know, right? So we saw a lot of quarterback shuffling this offseason, and it's still going on until Aaron Rodgers decides what he's going to do. I don't know. Maybe some team gets antsy and is like, hey, let me go ahead and get our quarterback of the future. And that would change things a lot for people because, all right, realistically, I think that you got Cam Ward, Shador, Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, Will Campbell, and
Mason Graham.
They're going to go in the top 6. That's what I believe. I believe those 6 players are going to be gone. What happens at 7, 8, 9, right in front of the Bears? that could open up the whole world to them in terms of does the Genties, the Warrens, when does the next tackle go? Because if you start to tell me now we're getting into a conversation where we say, well, would you rather have the second or third best tackle or the second or third best edge rusher, or would you rather have the best tight end and the best running back? Well, I don't know that I want to say give me the third best tackle and I'll pass on the best tight end on the best running back because I need one, right? So if Abdul Carter's gone, then somebody goes Pierce or somebody goes Michael Williams. Now you're down here talking about getting the third or fourth best edge rusher. It's like, well, why get the third or fourth best edge rusher when you can get the best tight end? So like it becomes a real conversation. But I think those 6 guys go in the first 6, and then 7, 8, 9 will kind of dictate. And I know the Bears are going to go through all their mock scenarios and they're going to simulators and things like that so they can have the best idea of what they think is going to happen. But like you said, everybody enters the draft with a plan, and then boom, somebody shakes the whole thing up, and you got to kind of adjust on the fly. And then that's when the conversation will come into play about, well, trading down. When does that come into play? Because if you start talking about those 6 guys going, and then Genty goes, and then Tyler Warren goes, and now you're sitting there and you're like, well, I don't love none of these dudes. I'll take any one of a few of them, but I could also probably move back, recoup some draft capital, and still get one of those guys at 14, 15, 16. So like that 7, 8, 9 is going to really dictate what happens right in front of the Bears.
And it helps too that the Bears, when you look at it surface level at their start, they don't technically need another tackle. They don't need another edge rusher to start for them right away because they do have starters there. And that's why when you talk about teams getting desperate, like, oh, I need to get one of these top 3 the offensive tackles or one of these top 3 edge rushers. Now you're more willing to move up because you don't want to not have that opportunity. And for the Bears, again, going back to what they did in free agency, they put themselves in a place where it's not, best player available that falls to them at 10 if they want to select there, or if teams are desperate, want to go up and they move back a couple slots in that middle tier and you get maybe that third best edge rusher at that position value, that's probably one good value for the pick, but also you're recouping picks and maybe do whatever the hell you want to do, in this second round, where it feels like when you kind of listen to the draft experts and guys that really study the draft, that's where probably the strength is going to be in that middle, that second round, third round, as opposed to some not having as much blue chip players at the top. So again, look, the Bears have, I think, really positioned themselves, Herb, to have a good draft and to honestly just build off of the momentum that they have in free agency this offseason and continue winning the offseason as they have done. And hopefully it translates to winning this season, winning these games. But I think they are positioned a lot better now than, like you said, a couple weeks ago, we weren't having that conversation about Tyler Warren, Ashton Genty. Like we heard it and we're like, can we talk about something else? Now
immediately dismissed it.
yeah, immediately. And we both have said it on this show, like, nah, it's not for me. But now I understand where you're coming from. And if they make that move, like, I'm not gonna shun the Bears for it. Like, I just won't, just because I understand how they got to that conclusion. But it does make it a lot more interesting though.
I look at the moves that the Bears have made, and I was on with KP with Kevin Powell doing WGN radio yesterday, and he asked me generally what I think about the moves that the Bears have been making. And my assessment is that they've made the right decisions, right? Mm-hmm. And that doesn't mean it's going to work out, right? Yeah. And I think there's a little bit of nuance to that. Like, making the right decision does not guarantee a successful outcome. But I do think it's a situation where a year or two from now, we aren't going to have the right to go back in hindsight and say, well, this didn't work, that didn't work, so these were the wrong decisions. No, these were the right decisions. Whether they work out or not, only time will tell. We don't really know if Ben Johnson's a good head coach. Nobody does. We've never even seen the man do it, right? But I know the conversation is talking like the Bears have, one of the top 5 head coaches in the league right now. Like, wait, can we just pipe down a little bit, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know that he's that good of a head coach. I have no idea. But I do know that they made the right decision in hiring him, right? And so I don't know if Joe Toney still has 3 years of high-level production left in him. I don't know if Grady Jarrett still has the burst, if he's going to continue to take another step coming back from that torn ACL 2 years ago. I don't know these things, right? But I do know they made the right decisions in going down and getting them. Is Drew Dahlman the second best center in the league? No, but he was the best one available in the market, and that's what it cost. So they made the right decision to go and get him. Right? It just is what it is. And I think going into the draft, they put themselves in a position where they can make another decision that says, hey, we just took the best player that was available. Or maybe they go ahead and address one of their needs. It'll depend on how the board falls to them. But I don't think you're going to be able to look back on whatever decision they make and say, oh, that was the wrong decision, right? I think they've positioned themselves by making the right decisions that they can do any one of a number of things without much room for criticism. Now, you may have wanted to do something else. You may have gone in a different direction, but much room for criticism, I don't know.
You know what? I think the wrong moves would have been not taking those risks in the first place. And that's what these are. Like, you are taking a risk when you are trading for a player like Joe Thuney, as accomplished as he is on the older side. Like, they're calculated risks. And if they didn't make those moves, that would be the wrong decision that we can probably go back on. Like, oh, but so-and-so was available and the Bears didn't get him. So it's, again, it's, you have to wait. You have to let it play out during the regular season and see how that offensive line meshes and gets chemistry with one another with all the new pieces on the interior. How Dio Dangbo can capitalize, like you said earlier, playing alongside or opposite of a guy like Montez Sweat. So we have to let it play out. But as of right now, the Bears did make the right moves. And to your credit, like, we don't know if it's going to actually translate. But those are the right moves at the time. And that's why the Bears have this flexibility in the draft and as what they can do, not only at 10, but obviously with the other picks that they have in the 2025 draft. But Herb, I wanted to get on here. We need to get back on here and talk some Bears football every time we do.
Had to, man.
Passionate. And I think what I think too, what people gain from us is like, it is informative. Like, you are, hopefully, like, after the show, you're like, damn, okay, Nick and Herb, there was a lot of good points made in this. Now you can at least, when you go talk to your Bears, fans, friends, like, think about it this way. Like, it's just different conversations coming up, different ways to view a draft that's still 34 days away. So I think that's, the luxury of, these Friday shows. And honestly, we just love talking ball. So it works out for everybody.
Do you think, before we go, there's any particular spot where they may dip their toe back into this, really, we probably on like a third wave of free agency now. Any spot that's kind of in your mind? Maybe it's, fourth, fifth linebacker, or maybe it's, depth at a certain position. Because I don't think the Bears have a ton of depth right now in some key spots. I love their depth in the secondary. I mean, they've had that for a couple of years now. And now if you want to talk about Jaquan, that's another situation. If you want to talk about those generational waves with Kevin Byard getting up there in age, another conversation. But I do think they have some depth at those positions. But I look at the offensive line, and we're talking about the age of Joe Thuney. God forbid, what if he goes down, right? What if he goes down in camp, right? And I'm not trying to jinx anybody. It's just football. Yeah. It is what it is. What if one of those interior guys that we've been so happy to get, what if somebody goes down early in the process, and then, like, now what? And so, maybe there's a way to kind of dip back in there and find, some depth at some of these spots.
No, I mean, look, offensive, the interior, like, here are the guys behind Joe Thuney right now. We just
saw Doug Kramer.
Yeah. You got your fullback, right? You got Bill Murray. So not the actor, but Bill Murray. You got Jordan McFadden, who's the third wave there. Behind Jonah Jackson, Ryan Bates. Look, you're still hanging on to Ryan Bates. Ricky Stromberg, who I think he played mostly center though, but he's back there. Doug Kramer and Chris Glasher. So those are guys on the interior that would back up if anything were to happen to, let's say, a Joe Thuney, Jonah Jackson. But, and it's been brought up in the trenches here, in the chat, it's been brought up. But I think safety is something that you do need to be actually considering here with, Kevin Byard's 32, but he didn't play like a 32-year-old last year. He led the team in tackles, was all over the place. And the question mark is Jaquan Brisker. It really is, because when he's when those two are on the field, like, that's a good duo at safety. But, just at this point, you almost expect Jaquan to miss some time. So if the Bears were to look at their boards, and, man, maybe with that one of the 2 second-round draft picks, they see like a safety that they really like. It's like, okay, I understand
Let's
why you're
go.
making that move. I understand there's uncertainty at the safety that you drafted, that Ryan Poles drafted in 2022, and Kevin Byard's just getting older. Last year's contract, so those definitely would be the positions. Also maybe a Sam linebacker. I mean, right now would it be
that third backer? Yeah.
Amen Angbamiga
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
Noah Sewell? Like,
No, so like we're still waiting for him to take his step and have his
yeah.
opportunity. Didn't really have the opportunity because Jack Sanborn was there. He's gone to Dallas now. I think he's going to have a big year in Dallas. Obviously, he's going over there with the same system. He's got Flus, he's got Borgonzi at linebacker coach.
True.
I think just having the opportunity to be on the field more, Jack is going to really, really produce out there. Familiarity with the system, all of it. Shout out to Jack Sanborn. I think he's a really good player. And always perform when he got his opportunities to. Dr. Truth was just referencing Tremaine Edmonds, and the returns on that contract to this point have just been okay. Just been okay, right? I don't want to sit here and act like he's been a bad player. That's not true, right? But has he been the impact next great Bears linebacker we were hoping for? That hasn't been the case either, right? He hasn't put his name on the list, with the Singletaries, Urlachers, and Briggs, right? And I know he's only had 2 years to be able to do it, but you haven't really seen that type of impact from him. Not that he's not there or he's playing bad. That some of that narrative gets out of control. But just being that difference maker, not quite as much. And so maybe you start to look at, okay, how can we go about replacing him? Which I thought Jack Sanborn would have made a lot of sense in that, but whatever.
No, I get it. I feel like Dallas fans too are gonna love Jackson. I could see it happening. I could definitely see him having, like you said, a good year over there with a lot of familiarity. But hope he does well, and I hope obviously all the other Bears players that are looking to step forward for this next upcoming season also play well, make our jobs a lot more fun too, to have a good winning football here for the Chicago Bears in 2025. Before we head out, we got to make sure that everybody that's in the chat already, make sure, one, you like this video, leave a comment on the video, and subscribe to It's the Bigs on YouTube so you get a notification, whenever we're going live and talking some Bears football. And, also share this channel with not only a fellow Bears fan, just a fellow Chicago sports fan. That will get this channel growing a little bit more as we continue to do these shows. But I do appreciate you hanging out on this Friday afternoon. There could be a million other things that you're doing. I know it's like windy as hell out right now, but we're glad that you're hanging out with us.
Yeah, for sure. We definitely appreciate y'all. Be here with y'all every Friday at 1 p.m. Central Time to talk some Bears, man. Thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks so much for all the comments. Make sure you hit the like button before you get out of here. Nick, who you got in the men's tournament?
Oh, man. I think I did fill out my bracket last minute, but Florida ended up, I just kept, clicking, and Florida ended up being the winner there. So that's who I got. Who do you got as your winner?
I don't know. I didn't even pick a bracket. I didn't even make a bracket, but I keep hearing Florida. I know they got 3 good guards that can shoot the ball. And so I'll go with somebody other than Florida. Because everybody's like Florida. I'm a huge Gators fan though, so I wouldn't be mad at that at all. I don't know.
You're rocking the Gators colors kind of right now too.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. I'll go with I have no idea. I really don't know. It so happened that every 1-2 seed that is in each bracket ended up making it to the Final Four. I'm like, well, we already know that's not happening. This bracket's busted. It's already busted. Yeah.
But,
I know I want South Carolina. I know I got South Carolina on the women's side. Give me South Carolina or Juju.
Or Juju. Yeah, Juju's phenomenal. She's
Give me South Carolina or Juju, man, on the women's side. But shout out to William and Mary, my homegirl, Aaron Dickerson Davis. Making history down there. Super, super proud.
There we go. This is going to be another edition of the Nick and Herb Show. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.